The Wednesday Week is sponsored by Michael Constantine Wealth Management. We bet you can't find a financial advisor closer to Hillsborough Stadium.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Week. My name's Dan Fudge, and with me, I've been joined by Simon, Vic, Stevie, and Ben, and we're going to be talking about last-minute winners, unfortunately, the wrong way this week, and we're going to be talking about our trip over the Pennines, and we're going to be talking about someone else's trip over the Pennines. So, without any further ado, is it adieu or adieu? Adieu means goodbye. Without any further ado, let's talk about our trip away at what used to be called the Reebok Stadium in Old Money. What's it called now, Si?
University of Bolton.
Shit name.
Uniball.
Because every town now has a university, doesn't it? So.
Hey, I nearly went to Bolton University. I went on an open day and everything.
Did you?
Back in the day, it was one of the only universities. This is digressing already. We've only just started. 15, 16, 17 years ago when I was looking at universities, Bolton got funding from the Brit School and from the BBC to provide a media studies degree. And they were one of the only universities in the country that offered such a degrey.
So when you come to Sheffield, you go to Leadmill. So did you have a night out at Phoenix Club?
No, I went with my dad and I looked around and went, do you know what, Dad? I don't think I want to go to university. And fast forward to me being mid-30s and I work in one and lecture in one. So there we go, full circle.
Fucked it. So there you are. That's Bolton. They've spent all that money that they had on university degrees and spent it on naming the stadium. So that's nice, isn't it? Now, Ben, you were there on Saturday. Were it warm enough for you, pal?
No, as we've just mentioned.
Well, they don't know. They haven't listened to that bit. That's why I'm going in again.
Yeah. Well, hopefully a lot of people that are listening went and will also know that we're absolutely Baltic. We set off about 12:30ish, and I said I'll be all right with a jumper, won't I? And I'm glad I got told to take a coat because it was.
Was cold. That your mum?
It was, yeah. I'm glad because it was absolutely freezing. It was winter.
I swear to God, every time I've ever gone to a football game, even now in my advanced years, my mum still tells me to take a jacket. And you know what? 100% of the time she's been correct to buy one. You don't know how cold it is, do you? You know what I mean? I remember going to this game at away at Pride Park. We got spanked 3-0. Paolo Di Canio played, if I remember rightly. They'd not filled in that corner at Derby County. And we said, come on, lads, let's wear our new orange away shirts. Let's just wear them. We'll be right. Hailstones, sleet coming in sideways. Worst day of my damn life. Lost 3-0.
I remember Derby County, first match of the season, probably about 10 years ago. And I went and I wore Ugg boots and a denim skirt because, naughties. And it was absolutely boiling. Like they were passing out water. The stewards were actually bringing water up into the corner of the stand because people were that hot. So you never know. Simon, did you wear your gilet?
I wore a gilet, yeah, obviously, because you never. My mum's not here to tell me to put a coat on, so I was undecided. And so I went with the gilet, and the Lancashire weather proved me right. That the gilet was just right. Was neither not too hot nor too cold, just right. But that ground is in the middle of nowhere, isn't it? It's I think it's quite high up as well, and I think it's exposed to all the weathers. And even though it was a beautiful sunny day, but then at one point it was like heavens opened and it snowed virtually, didn't it? Then
it was sleet, yeah.
Yeah.
So welcome back to Weather Chat. My name's Dan Fudge. Don't forget it is springtime and it is warm enough for just a light jacket or a gilet, as we said. Now, Steve, as we started out, it looks like that Liam Palmer has been dropped down a little bit over the last few games. I mean, as daft as it sounds, I don't think you can argue much about the form that Hunt's in, and Story, Dean, and Hutchinson, and their roles. You know what I mean? I don't think many would have many complaints about it. I think there was the main complaint in terms of lineup was Mendes Lang once again being pushed up front. Now, it's become apparent before that that's not been his position, and it's not great for him to play there. But who would you drop in that squad to accommodate for him, right?
Yeah, I think that's the issue, isn't it? I think Moore's got his mind's made up on the fact that he's going to get shoehorning Mendes Lang somewhere, somehow. I think the issue has been that he's naturally a better wing back than striker, but the former Hunt 2-in-2 as was, and Marvin Johnson, I think we've spoken about on a number of occasions, he being sort of a front runner, or he's definitely in the conversation for Player of the Year. You can't leave him out, and it's very difficult to leave Hunt out. I don't know if Moore's looked at it on Saturday and gone, well, Bolton have got players missing. It's an opportunity for us. I know we spoke last week about the fact he seems to be intent on rotating. On paper, I don't think there was anything necessarily wrong with the starting lineup last Saturday. I think I looked at it at 2:00. I think most Wednesday fans would have looked at it. You can turn your nose up at the fact that Mendez-Lang might not necessarily be a striker, an out-and-out striker, and we've got Berahino on the bench. But for me, at 2:00, I was relatively happy with the starting 11.
Yeah, fair enough. But, I don't think many had a complaint. I think the only question mark would have been NML, and we'll talk about him later on about what whether it would be somebody we'd take a look at next season. Now, Simon, the game started quite well, and in terms of shots on goal and statistics and all the rest of it, we battered them, didn't we?
We did batter them. We did. I think in the first 10, 15 minutes, Barry Bannon had 3 superb shots. We were virtually behind goal looking down the pitch, and so I think the third one he hit pretty much went out, but the first 2 were great shots saved by the keeper. Back to Mendez-Lang, he missed a sitter in the first half, and like he did last week, and I did say to Ethan, I will rue that miss, and we were on top, and we just couldn't put it away, and it was, that was the disappointing aspect of it, is that Bolton weren't very good. Bolton weren't very good at all. And Wednesday were the far better side. And we obviously we know the result, but those missed chances we can't keep going games like that and missing those chances. Got to put them away. And no, I didn't have an issue with Mendez-Lang playing up front, but when we changed it in the second half and put Berahino on, I thought we looked a different side. Obviously, we'll talk about that, I suppose, in a mo. But yeah, we battered them in first half. To go in 0-0 was a result for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Ben, I'll come to you next. Now, it's happened a couple of times now, and I remember it being quite prevalent at Gillingham about George Byers and his recent form. Do you reckon he's in a slump, or do you reckon that was a roll of the dice to try and change it up a little bit by bringing Patterson on?
I don't think it's a slump. I don't think he's been exceptionally good last few weeks. At the same time, I don't think he's been bad at all. I think it was just, I wouldn't have brought Patterson on at that point, to be honest. When he were lining Patterson and Berahino up, I thought he could have possibly been taking Gregory off. Not that he had a particularly bad game. He was just a bit quiet, and he picked up what looked like an injury at first half, but then come round from that. I think by the time half time had come. So yeah, I don't think it's a change I'd have made, to be honest, but I think it was more to accommodate keeping Mendez-Lang on, as we've already sort of alluded to, as well as having Berahino on, rather than Byers having a bad game. Mm-hmm. As Simon said, I think Berahino, he had a big part to play in the goal. The little flicking behind onto Marvin Johnson, I think it was, that we then got the corner, and then scored from the corner. So to come back to your original point, I don't think Byers is having a particularly bad time. I think you keep that midfield 3 consistent until the end of the season. There's nothing wrong with that. I do just think, as good as Mendez-Lang's been out wide, the chances that he's missed in the last couple that we've alluded to mean, for me, Berahino has to start. How he changed game at Doncaster, changed that at Bolton, scored an hat-trick, and then has not started since, I don't think, which has been harsh on him, because he's looked good whenever he's played, sort of post-Christmas, to be fair to him. So at the same time, I didn't moan at that starting lineup. Like we've said, it's a strong starting lineup that should win the game anyway.
It's nice to have a turn up about not moaning a starting lineup. Go on, Steve.
I know it's early, and we've not finished sort of analysing the game, but I think it's interesting. We're at a point at the minute where Moore seems to have a depth within his squad that means that he's actually got to make some decisions. in terms of the starting lineup. He's got to decide whether or not to put Mendez-Lang in or Berahino. He's got to decide whether Mendez-Lang goes in up top or out wide. We've got Pato sat on the bench. We're at a point now where for the first time this season, after 40 odd games, we're now looking at a situation where he's having to have conversations with lads that are being left out of the squad full stop because there's not enough room for him. And I think that's just an interesting thing to be thinking about at the moment. We've talked about whether or not he's the right person for the job. We've talked about his team selection and everything else. He's brought these players in, and now we're at a point where for the first time this season in April, he's now having to manage a squad and pick a side where he's not had to do that previously. His hand's been forced.
Yeah, there's been a few times during the season where Byers came in because he had to put him in. We had Adeniran and Shadipo and all, you know what I mean, and those players, and Byers had to come in. He really performed. He was the employee of the month, wasn't he, for February? Now Vic, Lee Gregory is an interesting one. I think without him, we just seem to lack a little bit of what's the word, the Harry and the agitation. He's a proper old school striker, isn't he?
That's something that we've not had for a very, very long time. And I think they made a big deal of that when we signed him. But yeah, just going on from what the guys have said, what Stevie just said, like, it's interesting that we're at a point now that I think, all right, given the goal that we conceded, maybe this isn't the right point. But I think as a defence, he's got a good lineup. He's got the right choice. I think as a midfield, he does. And I think with Gregory, he does. He's just got to decide who that other person is that goes alongside Gregory. And obviously, without injuries, you might say Windass, but then Windass says he isn't a striker, and there's all that side of things. But yeah, it's Lee Gregory's just, I mean, he's the same age as me, for God's sake. Like, I can't even come upstairs without being out of breath. And this time, I think I shared with you guys a photo I found from a night out, probably 10, 12 years ago, when he was an electrician, and we used to go on nights out, and he was an electrician, and now he's playing up front for Wednesday at 33, 34 years old. So the guy is, he's got to be just beating Ben for fitness, and you, Fudge.
Oh, mate, mine's all show muscles, mate. You know what I
mean? But yeah, he's an old school out and out striker, isn't he? And that's what we have been lacking over the last few years. I don't think since you sort of, maybe Stephen Fletcher, Gary Hooper, but in flashes, there was never a consistent sort of level with them. I think he's been the first person for a while that if he's on the pitch, he's either going to score or as a team we're going to score because he's on the pitch. And I don't think as yet he's been outmarked particularly. I think he had 2 or 3 on him all the time on Saturday, but he still managed to get in and around them. If I was an opposition manager, I'd be marking down our midfield 3. I wouldn't be even looking at the strikers, because I think if you close them down, you've shut the game down. But at the moment, we're fortunate that people seem to go, "Oh, Lee Gregory scores goals. Let's put 3 on him." And
that's letting Byers, Luongo, and Baz in.
Yeah,
it's his ability to get behind defenders as well, isn't it? There was a couple of times on Saturday where he thought it's a lost cause, the ball's coming over the top, and the next minute Gregory's got it, and I think that's where with Shadipo was it the Cambridge game, he came into his own, and he's not going to be, as Ash said at the start of the season, he'll never score 20. I think he's right. I don't think he will be a 20 goal scorer, but if you look at the number of assists or the fact that he pulls players away from people like Shadipo, then he is somebody who you need in your side. He's a great asset to Wednesday. Regards to the players having a bigger selection of players, is this where we're struggling now that we don't have a sort of reserve team anymore? Have we got an issue here that players can't impress in a reserve team like we used to have in the 90s, where they could play the football and impress and knock on the door of the manager, that the manager's having to make decisions from what he's seeing in training and picking players? Because the Mendez-Lang issue, obviously, he's come back from an injury, and his form before he got injured was absolutely superb. But then players have come into form after that, with the fact with Hunt on one side, and you look at that and you think you don't change a winning formula, as Vic was saying, and the team writes itself and has written itself over the last few weeks, months. other than, swapping and changing it around up front, it's down to Mendes-Lang to show and do something, say, in reserve games, to knock on the door of the manager, to get in the team, to displace whoever's in the side playing in his position.
I think you're right. I don't think that what we're saying is any slight on NML at all.
No,
you know what I mean?
sure.
I think it's because he's such a quality player. We're playing him out of position. You know what I mean? Because we are endeavouring to shoehorn him in somewhere. And that's that's probably where he's struggling. That Vic mentioned earlier on players like Gary Hooper and Stephen Fletcher. Now Fletcher, his aerial attack, his aerial ability there was nobody better in the league on some days. And then with Gary Hooper, his finishing was absolutely straight up lethal, and his movement off the ball, the way he used to pull defenders out, was great. But what we have with Gregory is somebody who chases lost causes, harries defenders, gets right up their backside, and he can finish a ball as well. And he seems to have more to his game. Does he have the finishing of Gary Hooper? No. Does he have the aerial presence of Stephen Fletcher? No. But there is no way, shape, or form I'm calling him a jack of all trades, master of none. You know what I mean? I think he's a different player, and I think he's a proper old school number 9. Now, Ben,
also, just to mention, like, obviously we all see him like from the stands and whatever, and I know some people will have met him in person and whatever, but just to clarify, like, even when he was an electrician, he was fucking massive, absolutely massive. And he's about 6'2", 6'3". Like, he is enormous and solid muscle. So there's a reason that he's getting, a bit like you. There's a reason that he's getting in and around those spots as well. And actually, somebody, we sometimes talk about players when you say they are actually too muscly and they're too muscular, they're too fit.
That's
to
why
be a
I'm
striker.
not a pro footballer.
Exactly.
That's why.
Same. But it's just, but I think that's something that you don't necessarily see from the side of the pitch. Like when you're watching it in the stands, he's enormous. He's an absolute brick shithouse. And the fact that he can run and he's getting into the positions that he does and he's scoring the goals that he does is, again, like testament to his fitness, really, because,
takes a lot to move them legs around. Can't watch it Asda.
Yeah.
Now, Ben, I don't want to make you feel left out all this tall person chat. Tell us about the goal, pal. Tell us about the goal.
It's not all about how tall you are. But the goal. As I've said, Berino played a big part in it. Then we get the corner, Bannon whips it in. Ollie Dean played a big part in it at the back post, towering header. I don't know who flicked it on from there, to be honest. I don't even think
it was a melee, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't even think you can see from replays, but yeah, stories on to pop it in, and I think it was the right decision just on team selection to bring him back in for Iofa. I think that showed. I think we're a lot steadier at the back. Overall, I know we'll talk about the goal, but let's be honest, overall we were a lot more assured across the back line. I thought Ollie Dean were colossus all day, to be honest. I think he's a
right bellend, though, isn't he? You can just see it.
He's a complete
brick. I love it.
It's a house, isn't he? So
he's a class above. He's a class above, and if we did go up, hopefully we do, then we got to look at trying to keep him permanently. I don't think we've got an hope if we didn't. But
I tell you what, Ben, listen, let's put a pin in that, because I've got some feedback from one of the listeners about that exact thing. So let's come back with it, and I will come to you to discuss that, because I think it's a really interesting point, if I'm honest. So let's move forward then. So the game, we had a few more chances. We've gone in with 1-0 up, Steve. And then it's another.
The goal was in the second half, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then it's another last minute thrown away 2 points. I mean, it's getting frustrating now, isn't it? Have you done any Bath stats to tell us how many points were thrown away? I saw you releasing stats on Twitter, which is why I've come to you about it, and I want to know what it is you've.
My comment was the points we've dropped. And I just picked out a couple of games, didn't I? And said if we'd have not dropped the points we'd dropped against Shrewsbury and Lincoln,
Wimbledon,
Cheltenham,
Morecambe, Cheltenham,
Gillingham.
Oh God, it's too long, isn't it? It's
huge, mate.
The reality is, you could half that list, and it was Ash, wasn't it? He's got a little graphic. It'd be maybe worth sharing on the socials at some point. That the form against the teams that are sort of 14th down and the points that we've dropped have been the massive sort of issue that we've got. And when we sit here at the end of the season, we deconstruct whether or not it's been a successful season or not. We'll go to those points. We'll look at last Saturday. For me personally, we've played Lincoln twice and Shrewsbury twice and got 2 points out of 12. If you stick another 6 points on that, we're much further up the league. And then you take away the Wimbledon goal, the Bolton goal, that's another 4 points. And then all of a sudden, those last minute goals that have absolutely killed us, it's a different story, isn't it? And I think, rather than discussing the goal on Saturday, just to a point, it becomes a very different conversation about whether or not this has been a successful season. It becomes a very different conversation about whether or not Darren Moore is the right person for the job, because we're sitting first, second, third in and around automatic promotion, with it, generally speaking, probably in our hands with the teams that we've got to play again before the end of the season. And we're sitting here thinking we've got a chance of going up automatically. It was an absolute kick in the teeth on Saturday, and we did say last week that a point wouldn't be a disaster, but it did feel like an absolute kick in the knackers when that goal went in, and the manner that it went in as well.
Now, for our female listeners and yourself, Vic, kick in the knackers hurts loads, and that's what he meant by that. Now, Vic, yeah. Now, Vic, I saw a tweet before we came on this evening that talking about, that every time we don't win, Darren Moore's name gets brought up and brought into conversation at the time. Steve mentioned it a few weeks ago that we won't be speaking about it had we have won, you know what I mean, after the Lincoln game. And he's right. But what I want to do is talk about our promotion prospects. And given the squad we have got 4 or 5 players that are 100% playing below their level right now. You know what I mean? You've got Story, who is a championship player, Mendes Lang, who's a championship player. You've got Barry, you've got Luongo, you know what I mean? And Harley Dean. Right, let's talk about those, those players. If we don't get automatic promotion, or if we don't get promoted at all, this season's been a bloody disaster, right?
Talking about this, was it last night, Stevie, night before? Where we were having a bit of a rant. Stevie's on annual leave, so he texts me now. And we were saying, first up, they're not championship players. They're playing in League One for Sheffield Wednesday. So let's just get that out of the way. They are not championship players. They are playing in League One. Whether or not they think they're good enough for the championship, etc., even down to Barry Bannon, he's still a League One player, as far as I'm concerned. But Stevie and I were talking about it, and we were saying, is it a point that you call for his head if we don't get promoted? Is it a point that you go, oh, look at all these 2 points we've dropped? And we both we were at different ends with it, weren't we, Steve? We were like, where you were just like, I'd give him another year. And I was like, well, I think it depends how we finish the season. If we don't even finish in the playoffs, I think I'm going to, as a fan, and not as somebody who's travelled to away games this season, I haven't been able to, I would call for his head if we don't get in the playoffs, because I think those points dropped have been so vital. But then look at Stevie's face. This was his other argument. I'm going to try and scroll back, Stevie. I'll find out what we said.
All right, Si, what do you reckon? Come on.
Right, okay. I would hope, right, if we don't make the playoffs, we finish 7th. You can't sack him on that. But what we've got to do next season is we've got to start off and continue how we started this season off. If he starts making the same mistakes, if we see the same issues coming in, has he learned from what in any job you need to see people learn from the mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. Take away the injuries.
Sorry, what mistakes has he made?
He didn't know what his starting lineup was for 5 months.
I listed his mistakes to you last night.
Oh, God. Go on, Si. Finish
the Wimbledon game where we capitulated in the second half. I can't remember who he took off, but did he bring Brown on in the second half? Just didn't.
Steve's going to explode here right now. But carry on, Si. Carry on in spite of it.
There are. You cannot sit there and say that he has not made mistakes. You were at the Cambridge game. Through the entire Cambridge game to 70 minutes, he played the wrong formation. He changed it. We equalised. right? That was the formation we should have played from 10, 15 minutes in when it wasn't working. That was a mistake, right? Managers make mistakes, but I would definitely not sack him on how we've done this season, because it's a new team, completely new team. We are finding our way. I do think we should finish at least in the playoffs, but you've got to look at the chopping and changing of the side. Some was forced upon him by injuries, etc. But some recently have been tinkering with the side. Where really did we need Gillingham game? You know, why change the back four of what he did in regards to bringing Dunkley in, who had an absolute nightmare of a game? You know, it's the dropping of Shadipo after he'd scored a hat-trick and put him on the bench. Little things like that, which are, in my mind, errors of judgment. So he can't sack him on finishing 7th in the league or getting in the playoffs and not getting to the playoff final. You know, that is a successful season in my mind to a point. But if he starts doing the same things next year, and I can't say, do you give him 10 games, do you 15 games? I hope
he's got till Christmas for you,
I'd like to think that we've got the rest of the season and we go up. You know, I want the guy to succeed. I don't want anybody to fail at all, because at the end of the day, it's our club. And we want to see somebody successful managing them, because they'll go up and they'll be successful. All right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's pretty pragmatic side, to be fair. I don't think I was. I think you're on more on the fence than I am, actually. That's actually surprised me. Okay, so Vic.
So
Stevie's words were,
in my opinion, I guess that's what IMO means, Stevie. The job he's done is similar to making the Titanic watertight. We are in free fall. We were in free fall. Reality is, at the end of the season, we all understood that it might take 2 to 3 years. And I said, yes, but I'll be very disappointed. And in him, to be honest, because his stupid tactics, as Simon's just mentioned, have cost us.
It's Steve.
But I won't call for his head if he picks it up now. And Stevie said, I'll be gutted. I want to get up, especially because I think we would do okay in the championship with this side and kick on again, but we've got to be stable. And then Stevie said, to my comment about his tactics costing us, quote reply, fair.
In depth.
And then we just went on to something else. But yeah, so I think it's kind of just, we just started slagging off Fudge. No.
Yeah, fair.
Then it was just, it is, for me, it's like Simon just said, like there's been games where you've sat there and you've looked at the lineup, or you've sat there and you've watched the substitutions. And don't get me wrong, there have been probably 2 or 3 games this year where he's made a substitution that you've gone, Jesus Christ, that's won us the game. Like that was an incredible decision to make. But there have been a lot that you've kind of gone, what the hell is happening with this lineup? Berahino, we mentioned earlier, you know, I've never been his biggest fan, but he finally found his feet. He finally found himself. He scored a hat trick, and then we dropped him. I think, well, what are we doing? So for me, it's, you know, we got Moore on board as a League One manager who was doing very, very good things with Doncaster. And look what's happened to Doncaster since. Lol.
Very good point.
And I think that's why we brought him on board, because we knew that he could do a job in this league. We said that at the end of last season. We knew we were going down. That's why we brought him on. But I do think there have been some silly, silly mistakes. And the fact that, you know, Darren Moore was one of the best defenders of his generation in the leagues that he played in. He was solid. He was, you know, he was no shit, and he just got on with it. And yet we can't defend a set piece. And there are things to me that I go, ooh, I don't know. I'm never, ever one to call for a manager's head, and I'm absolutely not doing that now. But I
did it live on ITV about Tony Pulis. You know what
I mean? I talked good things about Darren Moore when we first signed him, and someone still wished they'd hung me in Hillsborough Park. So who knows? But yeah, I think if we don't get at least in the playoffs, it's a very, very disappointing outcome from what could be.
Okay, right, Steve. I'm going to come to you now, and Ben, I'm going to get you to referee it. So you've got Vic here, Simon here. Steve's going to literally talk at you now, and don't forget he's bigger than you, right? He knows where you live.
I can't pull cars like Ben does.
so go on, Steve. Let's hear it. Let's go on.
Listen, I stand by everything that's been said. For me, I think, and this is no disrespect to anybody else on the pod, it's no disrespect to Darren Moore or the players, and it's just my own personal having. And listen, I was not a footballer. I'm not a footballer. I was very lucky to play at the level that I played at. That I've played with some decent lads and under some very, very good coaches and managers. And I just personally have this internal, what's the word, disconnect with that sort of mistake, the term mistake. I don't know where making mistakes start for Darren Moore and Darren Moore trusting players to go out and do a job. And that's the thing. When I talk about what mistakes has Darren Moore made, we can talk about Cambridge, absolutely fine. Is it a mistake to make that, to play that formation when it wasn't working? Yeah, absolutely 100%. But you look at the players that we've got, you look at the substitutions that he's made, you look at people that have come onto the pitch at various points within the game. We've all sat there and gone, yeah, absolutely. We're waxing lyrical about Saido Berahino at the moment. Bless his heart, he spent 6 months being slated because he was absolutely shit, you know. And then all of a sudden he's found a bit of form, he's scored some goals, and you know, Moore's come out and gone, we've had to manage him because he was playing out in Belgium and the standard wasn't right. And then we sit back and we go, that was an absolute masterstroke. And when he sat on the bench and he's looking disinterested, and where, you know, it comes out that all of a sudden he's been working in the gym and he's been getting stronger and he's been working on his match fitness and all of this, that and the other. All of a sudden, we trust, you know. So at what point are we saying the book stops with Darren Moore, and at what point are we saying the book stops with the players and the form of the players and the things that the players are doing on the pitch, and chuck into that the injuries that we've had and, you know, the mistakes that have been made, the lack of form and lack of impact that certain players have had within various points within games. You know, Darren Moore cannot legislate for Bailey Peacock-Farrell, an international goalkeeper of absolute top quality. I don't care what anybody says. Can't legislate for him putting the ball on the floor at Ipswich. That's not Darren Moore's fault. That's cost us 2 points. You know, you can't legislate. Pardon?
That's one moment. Like I come as someone, like I played to an all right level as girls' football was in the noughties. Like, so I played for South Yorkshire, I played for Dronfield, played for North East Derbyshire. And managers to me never really got involved. I was kind of at the level that we were all kind of growing up and they just kind of like went, go out there and win. Vic, put crosses in. So I didn't really get the sort of managerial link to things like you and Ben probably do, Stevie, where, you know, you've had a professional, semi-professional manager who has been, you know, a coach as well as a manager and not just told you to go out and win. So I don't really get, I guess, what his role is, if that makes sense. Like, I get it, I know what he does, but do you know what I mean? I don't really know what he would do before a game.
I'll tell you what it was for me. I played briefly for Andy Sinton when he was in charge of Fleet.
Drop that one.
Good number of years ago. Eh?
Did you hold his coat?
No,
why the fuck did we not get him on Lockdown Live?
He didn't like me. But what it was, I as I was getting older and as I was getting bigger, I mean, I was in my early 30s at this point now, and I found myself, I'd lost, what's that phrase? I'd lost that yard of pace. And he would come up to me and he'd go, Fudge, I need you to stop doing it. Because what I'd do, I'd take a step up, let the geezer run on, and then waft my arm in the air and go, he's off. I'm any ref, like, you know what I mean? Because I just couldn't be asked to chase these quick, nippy strikers anymore. Or I'd absolutely chin them all over the floor. But what he used to do to some of the lads, he used to manage them in a different way in order to build that confidence. Do you know what I mean? That some of the players had. We had one kid, Stacey, God, he was a dick. But he had what a left peg on him. And he'd go, Stacey, come. And he got away with bloody murder. And he used to wind me up, and then I'd get retreated as the dad, and he'd go, come on, Fudge, you've got to get your arm around Stacey. And we didn't listen to anybody. You know what I mean? It was all that. It was those little individual conversations that you used to have that and make you go out on that pitch and want to tear someone's head out or beat that winger or beat that fullback and stuff like that. Sometimes I just feel that his niceness kind of gets in the way. But right, Ben, you've got the unenviable task now of refereeing this here, pal. So we've got Simon who says, you know, playoffs wouldn't be a terrible season. You've got Vic that says he has made a lot of mistakes and we're playing catch up. And you've got Steve that says mistakes don't mean what you think he does. Go on.
So what I think is that regardless of what happens, you don't sack him, because after the 4 years that we've had, probably since Carlos going, there's been no real continuity.
And look at Carlos now. I was listening to him on TalkSport today, going, "Shit, he was good, wasn't he?" And I was banging the drum for him to bugger off after that third bite of that cherry that got, and I was like, "Get rid."
But that's sort of thing of what I'm saying, that we now need to stick with someone through thick and thin, good and bad. So for me, if we don't make the playoffs, we've massively underachieved for me with the squad that we've got. There's no hiding from that. If we get into the playoffs and don't go up, it's for me still a disappointing season. But I don't think you can sack him.
I don't think anybody's really disagreeing with you on that one. I think we've all got, like Vic says, we've all started at different ends, and we've all ended up with sacking him would probably be a shit idea.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why people would say that, especially if we didn't even make the playoffs. I can see why there'd be that argument with what he's had at his disposal. But for me, we need that continuity over 2 or 3 years, and you have just got to stick with some. Otherwise, you bring
becomes
someone in,
purely for 10 days.
You bring someone in and you're saying, "Oh, it's not their squad. Oh, it needs time to build it. Oh, it needs 2 transfer windows." It don't work. You start again. It's all a gamble whether you stick with him or not. But for me, I think the continuity is what we need. And we at the start of the season, we sat here and said we might be 10th, 11th, which at one point we might have been. But the good run that we've been on post Christmas has put us in this position. And as we've mentioned, if games finish in 80 minutes, which they don't, and if it weren't down to a lot of individual errors, we'd be on a lot more points than we are this season.
And that's where it comes down to Steve's points about player issues.
And for me, we can go on about the influence Moore's having from set pieces late on and the goals that we've conceded late on. This were happening before Darren Moore. This were happening since Stoke, Boxing Day 2019 or whatever. That's when this started. And for some reason, for some reason, we've changed. We got one or two centre halves left from that point. Wrestling we've changed a lot of the squad, and for whatever reason, it's still happening. Whether it's all late goals we've scored at Rotherham, it's going back to haunt us in tenfold, 20-fold, then possibly. But for me, a lot of the goals that we've conceded late on have been individual mistakes. You look at what Stevie said with Peacock Farrell. I think the ones at Cheltenham and the Cheltenham one, I think Dunkley had a fair bit to play in letting points slip there. Looking back at Wimbledon, you look at Jaden Brown. Individual Darren Moore.
Jaden Brown, God, does he still play for us?
Yeah, as much as we
signed him.
As much as we can say about Darren Moore, he can't stop that, and he can't. The one on Saturday, it's gone off Lee Gregory's thigh. That he can't. It's not like a free header with Letters Mansley, which did happen in the first half 1 or 2 times throughout the game, especially in the first half. They had a great chance, but on that occasion, what we've conceded from it's a spozzy goal, to be honest.
Spozzy. There you are. I'll make a note of Spozzy.
And they've made it 1-1. And for me, there's nothing Darren Moore can do about that. No. Lee Gregory's there to defend a corner at last minute because, as Vic says, 6'3" and been massive for the last 15 years. So you've got to have him in there. And it's
like a walnut, Ben. He is enormous. He makes you look skinny.
I think what you've got to look for next season, if we don't go up, is he's now got a core of a team. You know, all right, Jack Hunt's contract runs out, but I think Hunty's already said he would like to stay, and I'm sure it wouldn't be an issue signing him. He's got to look at the defenders we've got, as in Dunkley and Orfer, because I actually do think
there are reserve centre backs right now as well.
Yeah, and I actually think the guys we've got in, and obviously they're on loan, are a different gravy to Iorfa and Dunkley. I think they are better centre backs with Hutch in the middle. We've obviously got Byers and we've got Bannon tied up with contracts, but Luongo's contract's up, and there's question marks whether or not he wants to stay A, up north, or B, actually in the UK. And then obviously we've got Berahino, his contract's up at the end of the season.
We're talking about Darren Moore, though. Come on, man.
Darren, yeah, exactly.
You said it on the rest of the show.
Will Windass stay? He's very injury prone. Do we want to keep him? But he has got a really good core there to build upon. And he's got that team, to add to. That's what I liked about the January transfer window is we didn't start the players he brought in. He had to bring in because of injuries, and he brought some good centre backs in. Obviously, Dean got injured straight away, but he's come back and he is what we need at the back there. So we've and that team he's played now for a season, so he knows that team. So running into next season, it needs a little bit of additions here and there. And we've got a side that, and again, this last minute goals, and like Ben was saying, some of the goals that they've scored, if he can keep a strong and settled side, Christ, we haven't finished this season yet. We might end up in the playoffs, get to the playoff final, win, and we'll be talking about the championship next season. That would be a lovely conversation to have.
On the back of that, though, Si, I think a lot of people do forget that, for the 5 months, I believe, I don't think he knew what his best team was, and he's been fortunate to fall into the players that he's got, on one side of the coin. On the other, which is why I don't feel we should be pulling the trigger on him, is purely based on his recruitment. Now, how much he personally has to do with that, we have had an issue with recruitment for a number of years. I remember Vic saying on this show literally about 6 years ago that our neighbours over the road tend to develop players a lot better than we do. They have a really good academy system, and we don't seem to have had that. And we always seem to have got our recruitment piss poor wrong as well. So, that's something that Moore has had a lot of involvement in. And for me, he gets a big tick on that. So if we do get promoted, I'd be really interested to see what pulling power he's got. But I'm going to put a pin in that because I feel like we're all agreeing, but not.
A little thing extra. So we mentioned obviously Carlos, and that now feels like a century ago, doesn't it? That moment that we were 90 minutes from the Premier League. We're talking about hopefully now getting back to the Championship. And for me, Darren Moore is the most likable and qualified person that we've had in since Carlos. Look at what Carlos is doing now. Christ, he is like ripping the Portuguese league apart. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I do think on that vein, the grass isn't always greener. We were calling, for Carlos's head at a point that we were mid-table in the Championship, things were a little bit shitty, and we got rid of somebody and brought in Jos Lukai, and look at that. So I think, you can't judge everything on one manager, and I think the Carlos situation is probably, for the younger of the podcast, me and Ben, probably, a bit more close to home, because he is one of the first sort of, aside from Sturrock and, I've been there through Trevor Francis days and whatever, but he's been one of those managers that has kind of knitted us all together and brought us that kind of collective belief again since Danny Wilson absolutely shithoused it away back in 1999. So maybe, we don't need to be too negative. Let's stick. He's a nice man. Old Darren is a nice man. I'd take Carlos back tomorrow. He could have the attic bedroom. If my Ukrainian refugee turns up, I'll sell it. I'm sorry, I've got Carlos now. That's it.
Ukrainian, Carlos over Ukraine.
Yep.
That's what I'll call the show.
Yeah, I do think we need to at some point just kind of address that kind of, the grass is greener and whatever else. And actually, we were all slating Carlos 4 years ago, 3 years ago. It's not even that long ago, is it?
Oh.
It is.
Is it?
It is. Ben was still at high school.
It'll soon be 10 years since we were at playoff final.
Oh, jeez, all right.
All right.
But anyway, grass isn't always greener.
Can I just say one last thing about the Bolton game? And it's a bit of a rant.
Oh, hang on. All right. Can it wait? Because I'm busting for a slash, and I've been dead polite. So I'm going to put a break in right now. Here's a word from our sponsor.
The Wednesday week is sponsored by Michael Constantine Wealth Management. We bet you can't find a financial advisor closer to Hillsborough Stadium.
So welcome back. That was a word from our sponsor, and I've had a lovely wee. I hope you too have all got your poos and wees out like you're going on a big car journey. Now, Simon did mention just before the break that that he had something to say on the Bolton game to wrap that up, but Steve's got something to add about the Darren Moore managerial merry-go-round bits.
It's just a real quick one. I'm actually midway through listening to a different podcast. Don't look at me like that. I'm on the High Performance podcast at the minute, and this week it's David Moyes, and
I've been listening to that.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it just made me think. You know, you look at, first of all, Alex Ferguson. He talks about Manchester United a little bit. You look at the Fergie being however close he was to getting sacked until Mark Robins scored the goal in 1990, I think it was. I've got no frame of reference and chronology on that. It's just me being as was once a kid. He was going to get sacked. He was 3-4 years into the job and they weren't happy. They stuck with him because he got a last minute equaliser, as I remember. And then they went on and kicked on, won the league. It took them another 2-3 years to win the league after that, to be fair. But they stuck with him, and they had higher expectations. They were at the time arguably a bigger club than obviously Sheffield Wednesday are. And look at the success that followed. And you look at where David Moyes is now, and you look at the shite that Manchester United have had to go through since getting rid of Moyes after Fergie. What would have happened if they'd have stuck with Moyes and held their nerve a little bit for another year or two, and accepted that it might get a little bit worse before it gets better, just to sort of bring it round from a
I get what you mean, Steve, but for every Alex Ferguson success story, there's also a Tony Pulis, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I'm absolutely not suggesting for 1 second that Darren Moore's the man to get us into the Premiership and have us battling mid-table, West Ham, that sort of level, because that's the aspiration now for a team like Sheffield Wednesday in 2022. That's what we're aiming for, isn't it? We're never going to win the Premiership, but I'd also argue that the job that he's doing at the moment is better than anything Pulis did. It's better than what we had under Monk.
It's more exciting in some respects.
It's better. And I think, we've talked about this. I just think we need to be careful what we wish for.
Okay. So solid point. Now, Si, wrap up the Bolton game for us, and then we'll go to my big philosophical question.
Right. I was a bit disappointed with our fans on Saturday in regards to after we scored the goal and the pyrotechnics that were thrown onto our own fans from the top tier. It was pretty much, it was out of order, big style. Pyrotechnics, fine, but come on. We were on the edge looking down on those below, and they came over and they were hitting our fans on the heads. And it was not a nice thing to see. I love celebrating goals. It's fantastic. If you want to hold the pyrotechnic in your hand, whatever, but this throwing them, I'm sorry. I know I'm a 51-year-old old Mardy, old white man living in Sheffield, and I'm allowed to moan because it's my age, but that was shit out of order. And if we'd been sat in that lower tier, could have been Ben, it could have been Vic, it could have been Ash and his young lad who goes to school with my boy, could have been anyone, and one went over and hit a young lad on the head, and it was a bit scary, to be honest. Some went on the pitch, and
Berahino went down with a head injury, didn't he?
I think he got caught in the melee when we scored. I don't think it was at first. Someone said, "Was it pyrotechnic?" But come on, it doesn't take rocket science.
Don't throw him. You know what I mean?
Just don't throw him.
If you want to hold it in your hand, I've got no problem with that.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to take a ban for it, take a fucking ban for it.
If you're big enough to buy a pyrotechnic and take it into the ground, if you're big enough to buy a bloody firework or a Molotov cocktail and take it in,
I don't mind
it yourself.
I think it's brilliant. It brings atmosphere. I think it's fantastic. But then when you start launching them, knowing full well that the people below you, and it's still not acceptable if it's if it's home fans or away fans below you. There are people blowers, and somebody could have got seriously injured. And I know it sounds, it's dead boring. He's having a moan at us. That were out of order, proper out of order. It's wrong.
I remember being at Bramall Lane. Probably 15 years ago, something like that, when we played them on I think it was a Friday night. Frank Songo played. I can't really remember.
Fucking hell, Vic, you sound like my nan telling the story there. Like,
but there was a pyrotechnic that went into the crowd, and it hit this girl right in the middle of the eye. She was only 12, and I remember at the time it was all over the Star and everything, nearly blinded her.
I love our fans. I think they're brilliant. The atmosphere they bring is brilliant, but I think sometimes you just need to rein it in a little bit. you know, and seeing our own fans get hurt. I wouldn't want anybody getting hurt, but just seeing our own fans getting hurt, and a young lad as well, probably a little bit younger than my son who's 13. I'd have been, sorry, excuse the F word, I'd have been fucking livid.
Yeah, we don't swear on this podcast, but I get your passion there, Si. I tell you what, that is a really solid point.
Sam.
You know, stop it off. And also, it's a League One game against Bolton. That's really fucking tin pot, lads. You know what I mean? If it were like a cup final, or even if it were a pizza trophy, I'd still be fucking embarrassed. You make me toes curl, but Jesus wept. Come on now, lads. Right, I'm going to move this on because we're into the last 10 minutes, and I think Simon's going to tell us about the train travel times down to Milton Keynes at some point. So what we're going to do, this is going to be the point that I mentioned earlier. Now, back in the early part of the season, we had a guy on called Stokey, and he's not been very well. You know, he's the guy that sends me the eight text messages that I mentioned before, and he's not been too clever, and he's in hospital. So and what he does, I thought I will give him a platform, and I'll go, come on, what's your point? Come on, get him across. So I went scrolling back through our conversation, and I'll not lie, there's a lot to pick at, but he came up with one today that I wanted to bring to you. And Ben, you touched on it earlier on. He said, I know Dean is doing well for us, but I always get wary of 30 plus signings, meaning their age, not signing 30 players. It's just not very forward thinking. It's a stopgap signing. I'm already a bit like, fuck, our front line is messed up with the future because Gregory has one, maybe two to push good seasons left in him. So that's a time bomb getting a replacement there. I love Pato, but he's not exactly blessed with quality. And Canberry tries but falls short, and Berahino as well. Berahino. But the original point remains. I mean, Harley Dean I think he's great. And you're right, he's a big bellend. But in a good way, if that's the thing. I'm pretty sure Cameron Dawson writes that about me in Toilet Walls. But Ben, Harley Dean, you touched on him earlier on. Would you give him another bite of the cherry? How long a contract would you give him if we offered one? Do you reckon there'd be other clubs offering him 3-4 year contracts, that type of thing, and that's where we might lose him? Yeah,
I think where we might lose him is if we don't go up, he's not going to stay in League One sort of the last maybe three or four good years of his career, especially not at this stage because he's shown he's too good for it. I think if we did go up, I think we'd have a chance. I'd offer him a couple of years. I don't see there being anything wrong with that from our point of view. As you've said, we've signed Gregory, who's 32, 33, I think. And let's be honest, we've needed him this season. I get the idea of it being a stopgap, but you could say that anyone's a stopgap in that case. Even if you're staying for 4 or 5 years, you're still filling that place for 4 or 5 years. So he's a quality player, and for me, if we did go up, you've got to try and keep him. You've got to try and keep him if we didn't go up, but I don't think that's going to happen. The same can be probably said for Jordan Story, to be honest. Fair enough. Now,
I'm so depressed that I am now at an age.
I was literally going to start the entire thing with that entire thing. I was going to go, you're an old man. Do you know what? No, I'll come to Vic.
Too old to be a footballer.
Yeah. Wait till you get older than the managers.
In home bargains tonight for a gin liqueur. I got ID'd. And I said to girl on till, she went, have you got any ID? And I looked in my purse and I was like, I don't know. I said, I hope I have, because I'm old enough to be your mother. Because she had to ask, right? She ID'd me, then she had to ask for the manager's position to sell me the gin liqueur that I was buying because she wasn't 18. I was like, you cheeky fucker. And now we are discussing whether a player in his 30s is too old to play football. And do you know what, Simon? I think me and you should just buy a bungalow. I give up.
Lee Gregory actually was born after I passed my driving test.
Oh my God. That means I was.
It's when you get older than the managers, that's always really upsetting. You know what I mean? Because like Gary Monk was a year older than me, and I remember thinking, this ain't far off coming. You know what I mean?
I remember years ago when we signed Gary Medine, before he was Gary Medine, and I remember saying to my mum, God, he's a bit of all right. And my mum was like, you've had a season ticket longer than he's been alive. And that ruined me.
Welcome to my world.
Oh no!
Tell you what, actually, that's a good question to put out.
I'm a middle-aged white man. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that's you now. I'll put it out. I'll put out the question. I'll tell them who was the player that made you realise how old you are. You know, the first time we signed a player that was younger than you. You know what I mean? So I'll put that out today. That'll be
It's
play
probably Chris Bart Williams.
young.
think
God
I'm
Almighty,
banned from
Si,
Twitter.
really?
Probably.
Fucking hell.
How old was he when he signed for us?
He was like 17.
Yeah, he was, and it was like 92, 93, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I'd have been 22. Yeah.
Sweet child of mine. Well, I tell you what. Let's stop before Nan and Grandad carry on talking about the immersion heater and all the rest of it. Right, Si.
Oh,
What's going on at the weekend, pal? And give me a prediction.
Well, I was a bit shocked. I saw it all over Twitter today about apparently on Saturday night we're Wednesday playing Milton Keynes Dons. And
really?
there's
How many tickets have we sold?
over 5,000 apparently.
You never heard of it, do you?
How long is the journey?
Apparently, it's about 250 miles round trip.
Oh my God, on Easter weekend. Please
Is
tell
it
me there
Easter
are
weekend?
trains.
Never.
Are there trains available, Simon?
Apparently not. But
Is it on Sky?
now. Apparently we've put busters on.
Just for context, right? I messaged our WhatsApp group earlier just saying, hi guys, does anyone know how many tickets we've sold for Saturday and how long the round trip is? And if there are any trains back and blah, blah. And Simon was like, actually, it's a pretty good showing. And then he logged on to Twitter and saw what I was on about.
But it is a good showing.
It is. It's fantastic.
And
It is impressive.
I know Steve's going with his daughter. I'm going with my son. Ben, are you going?
I'm going.
Ash,
Because it moved, I've got bloody work.
I think
I'm
Ash
really
is
annoyed
going.
about
Yeah,
it.
you were going to come, weren't you?
Yeah.
You were going to come.
I've got Nan and duties on Saturday.
and I
I'm
know-
You're
afraid.
looking after yourself, get immersion heater on.
Yeah.
And I know Steve's staying over in the cosmopolitan land of MK.
Ooh.
In a concrete bed. On a
Phenomenal.
concrete floor. In a
Phenomenal.
concrete
It's
room.
But it needs to be the best room possible. For a £10 upgrade, I could have got a room in the hotel at the stadium that when I opened the curtains would have looked over the pitch.
Would you have to leave at like 7:30 though?
Can you watch the game from your bedroom?
That's what Molly said. But you know,
Would you be like that bloke in that Birmingham game?
Yeah.
And that-
yeah. She's like, Daddy, for an extra £10, we could sit in our room and watch it. I'm like, that's not the point.
Steve, I'd give you a tenner. I'm not going to get fireworks thrown at me. I can have a beer, and you know that smell of piss
You
and
sit in your
blood.
pants. You could
Yeah.
literally sit in your pants and watch the football match.
Yeah,
live.
Daryl
Like
Latchman.
Homer Simpson.
Yeah. Go Sports.
Daryl Latchman.
Yeah, in it. All right. So Simon, let's have a prediction out of you. 250-mile round trip, 5,000 people, no trains on a bank holiday weekend. What are we saying?
Oh crap! Well, they're the form team, aren't they?
Are they?
Yeah.
Aye.
Somebody put a form table out today. We're actually not bad. We'd be 6th rather than 5th, so we're there or thereabouts.
Thank you that, you chuff.
But Rotherham are proper near the bottom. MK Dons, I think, and top, or Wigan are top. They
Bigger
lost-
than MK Dons, isn't it?
Did they lose the other day, MK?
What are we fucking talking
Draw.
about? What's the score going to be? What's happening?
Hey, I'm just trying to go around to the fact that I haven't got a bloody clue.
All right.
But we always raise our game, as Steve always brings up, and I agree entirely with him. We always raise the game against the better teams. So it's not one of the lower teams where we'll play Gillingham and 0-0 draw away from home. So I'm going
Hashtag Stevie's bath.
2-1. 2-1 Wednesday.
2-1. I got cramp in my wrist here, waiting for you to tell me. Here we are. Right. Simon says 2-1. 2-1. 2.
You've written it in pencil.
I've written it in pencil, so I can rub it out later on. We can pretend you're right when we cut in all the different scores that you've said in the next 5 minutes. Steve, what about you, pal?
I'd take a point.
You know what? I think I would.
I'd take a point on Saturday. I think a point and a strong showing. Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
All right. Talking 1-2 or what do you reckon?
Do you know what? I think it'll be 1-1, and I think they'll score in 80-minute plus. I think we'll get a goal, and we'll
Doesn't
be
sound like us.
yeah, we'll be sitting here. It'll be
Mix it up,
Bolton,
Stevie.
Bolton sequel, and it'll probably be Corbyn who scores off the bench. They'll
It's written in the
yeah.
stars, isn't it?
And it'll going off his arse.
Yep. Or a goalkeeping error, something like that. What about you, Benjo?
I think we need to take 4 points from Wickham and MK Dons. Whichever way we do it, I'm not really bothered. I'll go 3-2 Wednesday.
Did you hear that, Si? That took him about 4 seconds to tell me a prediction there.
Yeah, but he's young, and I'm trying to make
Yeah,
it the
he's
fact that I've
young.
not got much longer left on this planet.
I see you just prolonging it, really.
And I'm taller than Ben.
All right.
Oh,
Ben's gone 3-2 Wendy. What about you, Vic?
I think I'm going to put my cheeky Jack Hunt bet on again because I'm £180 up over the last 3 weeks just from a Jack Hunt anytime first and last.
Yeah.
So on that note, I'm going to go 2-0 Wednesday.
2-0 Wendy, Vic. I'm going to make a note of these so I can draw on them for next week because we make all these predictions and then never come back to them the following week, do we? You know what I mean? I think I agree with Steve. I think I'll take a draw. And I think it probably would be 1-1, and then we'll need to beat Wickham. But as daft as it sounds, we can actually cement our playoff place if Plymouth lose and we win.
Really? Is that like legit? Like, so we can guarantee playoffs?
We can guarantee playoffs if one game goes our way. And
that can't be right. There's 5 games left.
We've got Crew on Monday as well. Tuesday, sorry.
No, it said it on the Sheffield Star or Yorkshire Live or one of the outlets.
Ben's shaking his head, and Ben's a proper journalist because he goes to my university.
It can't be though, can it? If there's 15 points to play for and there's Wickham, maybe after Wickham game, possibly. If
it might be that. It might be that I read. I'll not lie. I weren't particularly paying attention. Like, you know what I mean? Hang on here. What's this one? No, hang on.
I think if we beat MK, Crew, and Wickham, then
the Crew.
Well, we've only got 2 games left after that, anyway, haven't we?
Yeah, I was going to say in the 5 games. Well, anyway, you know what? Maths. That's not our strong spot. That's why we're here. So, what we got, Steve? Have you got some statistics for us?
Steve's got his Kindle out.
It's an iPad. Thank you very much.
Oh, if anybody is thinking of buying an Amazon Kindle 10, they're rubbish.
I have an iPad.
Talking rubbish now. We're good 2 weeks away from being playoff safe.
I blame Dom Howson for that type of shit that I'm peddling on
Balls
this show.
are out.
Balls are out. It's all gone to shit. Right, listen. So before I wrap up tonight, there are a couple of things I want to mention. So Stoke, you get well soon, pal. And in terms of getting well soon as well, we've got Tango who's laid up. Vic, what happened to him?
I don't want to say anything that might go against any sort of court situation, but Tango had an issue at Bolton and hurt his leg and has had to have an operation and is now in a wheelchair for a while. Right. So, Paul, we wish you all the best. Know you're a big listener and you're a big friend of the show, and yeah, we just hope you get better soon.
I like the idea, actually. You know, it's just dawned on me now. Something's just dawned on me that, you know, we were taking the smag out of Ben last season about things that, you know, why is the speed camera icon what it is? You know what I mean? Like, young kids will look at the icon and go, what the fuck is that? We talk about why do you hang up a phone? Why it's a save icon is what it is. And I've just thought, you've got to explain to your daughter, Stevie, why is he called Tango? And then you've got to find that advert.
And then just go slap her around the face.
Yeah. And then try and stop your daughter slapping each other for the next year.
Exactly where I've gone with it.
That. Kids actually used to just slap each other around the face.
Yeah, they changed it for the kiss.
Got stopped, yeah.
They changed it for the kiss. And then next one, Vic, you've got some news about the wee man.
Little Shay, oh, what a legend. So he's done another leg to his numerous triathlons last weekend. So he cycled to Bolton and back over the Woodhead Pass, got absolutely drenched. He was absolutely knackered. His dad drove him home on Friday night, and then they went to the match on Saturday. Like, what on earth? So what an icon. I just love him. He's into like 45 grand, I think now, something like that, 40 to 45 grand. Unbelievable. Just love him. What, you know, none of us could do that. Well, obviously, I mean, Ben does it occasionally and stops for a shit here. But other than that, you know, it's a rare occurrence that a child goes and cycles that amount, like that distance, and just Wow.
Fair play. Fair play. And Ben, Shay, it is a rare occurrence that a child goes that long, and it's also a rare occurrence that a child sounds like an old man in a working men's club. But I don't want you to change anything. I love the kid. I love the kid. Do you know what it reminds me of? Like, you know, like, do you remember Unlucky Alf from the Fast Show? Like, I hope I don't fall in that bloody hole at End of our road. Like, you know what I mean? He sounds like that, and I love him. I love that he sounds like a middle-aged man already. You know what I mean? He does Yorkshire right well, and he's making us all proud. And thanks a lot, Shay, for doing it. Now, listen, folks, that's us for an hour now. We're going to give you a minute. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you next time. See you later.
The Wednesday week is sponsored by Michael Constantine Wealth Management. We bet you can't find a financial advisor closer to Hillsborough Stadium.